We gonna rise up till it's won. We gonna rise up till it's won. When the people rise up, the powers come down. When the people rise up, the powers come down. They try to stop us, but we keep coming back. They try to stop us, but we keep coming back. We gonna rise up till it's won. We gonna rise up till it's won. When the people rise up, the powers come down. When the people rise up, the powers come down. They try to stop us, but we keep coming back. They try to stop us, but we keep coming back. We gonna rise up till it's won. We gonna rise up till it's won. When the people rise up, the powers come down. When the people rise up, the powers come down. They try to stop us, but we keep coming back. They try to stop us, but we keep coming back. They try to stop us, but we keep coming back.
All right, thank you everyone for being here. As I wrote in the chat, please take a moment to introduce yourself with your name, your pronouns, and where you're calling in from. Before we get started, a quick note about accessibility at this event. Automatic closed captioning is available. To toggle it on or off, please click the CC or live transcript button on the bottom of your screen and select show subtitle. Additional settings to adjust the size and the font can be found by clicking subtitle settings. This event was made possible through the collaboration between Sunrise Beaverton, the Young Dems of Washington County, WashingtonCounty350.org, our panelists, and of course, all of you. Thank you for being here. All right, let's get started. My name is Sushrita. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the chair of the Young Dems Committee of Washington County, and I will be one of your facilitators. I'll pass it on to Maggie to introduce themselves.
Hi, everybody. I'm Maggie. I use they, them pronouns. I'm with Sunrise Beaverton. I've been involved with the hub for almost 2 years, and I'm on the policy team, and super excited to be here talking about the Green New Deal. I feel like this is one step closer to making the Green New Deal our reality. So just really excited to be here. Thanks for being here. And I'm going to pass this over to the next facilitator, Shashir.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shishir. I use he, him pronouns. I've been with the hub for a few months and I work on the policy team. Mostly I've been working on the Green New Deal resolution, which we hope to get through the City Council. Thank you all so much for being part of this movement, and let's hope we can all make this happen. And I'll pass this over to Pedro.
Hi everyone, my name is Pedro. I'm with the Sunrise Movement. I've been with the hub for a little over a year and a half now. It's been a great year and a half, and I've loved meeting a lot of passionate people about the climate crisis and just local grassroots organizing. Let me pass it to the next facilitator, Debbie.
Hi, I'm Debbie Garman. I am a team lead for 350.org Washington County, which I helped to found in 2016. We're active in supporting community education and spreading word about climate crisis. And it's a real pleasure to be here working with this team today. I'd like to pass it to, golly, I'm not sure who I should pass it to.
You can pass it to me.
Yay, thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Rena. I'm a member of Sunrise Beaverton, and I am part of the education team. And I think Ariel might not be quite ready yet, but Ariel is also here and will be monitoring the chat and for question and answer, and is a part of Sunrise Beaverton. So with that, I think we are just going to dive in. So these are the requests we wanted to make. Please, to get the most out of this public forum, we are going to be covering a lot of material. So it's often helpful to remove distractions, get yourself a beverage, get comfortable, get things to take notes on. And make sure you're centering yourself, checking in with your needs and being really present, because like I said, we are going to be going over a lot. So if you need to take a minute right now to situate yourself, that is totally fine. Please do that. And we're just going to go over some introductions. So with that, we want to acknowledge the history of the physical spaces across the country that we occupy, even though we are online. We acknowledge that in Beaverton, we are situated on traditional Atfalati Kalapuya land, or otherwise known as Tualatin Kalapuya. Some of whose descendants are enrolled in the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians. These lands were stolen by the federal government and awarded to settlers traveling the Oregon Trail long before they were legally ceded under deceptive and coercive conditions. First in the unratified Treaty of 1851, and then in the ratified Willamette Treaty of 1855. Much more can be learned from the K-12 curriculum that has been written by local tribal leaders, which is a new state mandate for all school districts in Oregon. We solemnly reflect on the genocide and displacement of families and relatives. We commit ourselves to dismantling ongoing practices of settler colonialism and moving forward towards tribal sovereignty and reconciliation. We humbly look to Indigenous leadership on Indigenous lands. Anyone who is not Indigenous to the land they're on is a settler on stolen land. If you don't know whose land you're on, I'd like to invite you to use this app, nativeland.ca, to spend some time researching whose land you might be on. It's important to realize too that this app should be used just as a starting point to start getting some names of tribal nations that might have connections with the land you're on, because it isn't necessarily the end all be all for information. A just world cannot continue this way. We need a Green New Deal with Indigenous sovereignty. So I want to welcome those of you who in this pandemic might be feeling overwhelmed by everything, and also those of you who are excited to know more. I want to welcome the impatience or maybe boredom, and also the curiosity. We want to welcome people who are mourning, or people who have lost their jobs, people who might be having anxiety and worry, as well as joy in their lives. And today is March 13th, 2021. We want to recognize the multiple anniversaries we are living through right now. This marks 1 year of shelter in place due to the COVID-19 pandemic in Oregon, a crisis that could have been avoided, but for our country's focus on private healthcare and constantly churning capitalist economy, leaving us to fend for ourselves. And state and local governments are going to be dealing with the rippling impacts of this crisis for years to come. We're also meeting 1 year to the date of the murder of Breonna Taylor by white officers of the Louisville Police Department, who was an African-American EMT living in Louisville, Kentucky. This is a solemn reminder that we must uplift the voices of other movements in our battle for systemic change. This week also marks a success: the Rutgers University decision to divest from fossil fuels from their endowment. This marks over $14 trillion in assets worldwide that have been committed to divestments from fossil fuels. As we take a minute to celebrate this moment, let us also imagine the future of divestment, not only from fossil fuels, but from all systems of harm and white supremacy. Divestment from prisons and policing to community care and providing essential services like Medicare for all and good jobs for everyone who wants one. At Sunrise, we organize to pass the Green New Deal, build a livable future for all, and achieve collective liberation at large. As we fight for climate justice, we also fight to end white supremacy, racism, and the continued systemic extraction of our environment and communities. So today we are wrapping up our introductions right now. In a moment, we will be talking about the Green New Deal with a local spotlight. Following, we will get a chance to hear from our local elected guests about the climate work that is happening in our community. Afterwards, we'll open it up for a brief question and answer, and then conclude with what we are looking forward to in Washington County. With that, I'm going to pass it to Maggie.
Thank you, Rena. So what is the Green New Deal? Well, to talk about the Green New Deal, we need to talk about this moment that we are in. Let's get straight to it. Right now, we're in a crisis of historic proportions. We've never seen anything like this before. Not only a pandemic that's sweeping the country, but also a collapse of our economy. If you want to take a moment to talk about how this feels for you in the chat, please feel free. Yeah, terrified, definitely. Overwhelmed. Yeah, for sure. This is an international emergency, and it's threatening the well-being of our entire country and the world. To date, 521,000 people have died from COVID-19, and that's just the official count. The true numbers are much higher. This is also having huge impacts on our economy and our jobs. Already, nearly 1 in 5 workers in the US have faced layoffs or loss of work due to coronavirus, including 1 in 4 workers making under $50,000 a year. In the past week alone, first-time claims for unemployment benefits totaled $750,000. On the other hand, the climate crisis is still looming, and this is personal. You probably know someone affected by this, or maybe you have been. Our loved ones in the South and Midwest had to survive a winter storm so large it hasn't been experienced in generations. Some people froze to death because they didn't have a house. People's pipes burst, people lost pay because of loss of work. This was terrible and still completely preventable. And while the people were failed by politicians escaping to warmer weather, we saw so much mobilization. In response to this devastating storm, the Sunrise Movements, with its local Texas hubs, mobilized to provide mutual aid to families in need on the ground and have raised tens of thousands of dollars to support these efforts to make up for the government's failures. Let's take a minute to breathe and acknowledge what this means for young people, for working class people, and people of color who are going to be hit especially hard by this. It feels bleak, even hopeless, but we've been in moments like this before. This photo is from the Great Depression. It's difficult to explain the sheer desperation of this period. Unemployment was at a record high and people were desperate, moving across the country, standing for hours for food. Thousands found themselves homeless or without the land they'd made their living on. And that crisis was met with the original New Deal, a sweeping set of legislation that led to the creation of dozens of administrations and programs that continue to form the backbone of our society today. It's proof that when we face huge crises, we can get out of them. We just need the political will to get us there. Of course, the New Deal left a lot of people out and upheld and even furthered racist systems of the time. There was a lot that wasn't perfect, but it does show us that even in crisis, massive change is possible. To talk about that change, I'm going to pass this back to Rena.
Thank you, Maggie. In this moment, facing these crises, it's time for us to do the same thing again. The case has never been clearer for a Green New Deal, a massive investment in our people, environment, and economy. One thing that's crucial here is that we're also pushing for those rights for people who are usually ignored by the American legal system and were in fact ignored by the first New Deal in the 1930s, such as agricultural and domestic workers who were mostly Black. This includes enshrining migrant justice and Indigenous sovereignty into the Green New Deal. I know sometimes this can feel like a lot to do, but this list of provisions isn't just a laundry list. It's actually the only way and the only hope we have to create this level of systemic change. A project like the Green New Deal needs the full might of society, and that means we need to build a vision that all of society can see itself in. We can't try to make do with reformist reforms like cap and trade deals, or increased body-worn cameras on police, or anti-bias trainings for the police, or proclamations from officials. However much that may feel comfortable and just right for liberals and Democrats who are attached to the centrism that has been fetishized since the Clinton administration. Let's be clear that these diluted responses will not be enough to solve our crises. They will not be enough. We can't entertain a debate about what is too radical or what is reasonable. We have to stay focused on what is in fact going to solve our interconnected crises. And the solutions that have been demanded from marginalized people and frontline communities have been clear. They have been repeated and they have been thoroughly explained. Elected officials can't get away with asking questions and listening anymore. They need to simply pay attention and act. Some movements to highlight here are Movimiento Cosecha, which is a sister movement organizing to end deportations, reunite families, and legalize 11 million undocumented people in this country. The Red Nation, which is a radical organization of Native and non-Native people fighting for Indigenous sovereignty and liberation in a proposition called the Red Deal, not intended to replace the Green New Deal, but to support the proposal by centering Native leaders and the knowledge that comes with centuries of fighting back against a government that sought to destroy them. The Red Deal poses some powerful questions. Why is it easier for some to imagine the end of fossil fuels, but not the end of settler colonialism? We can imagine green economies and carbon-free wind turbines, solar power, and electric bullet train utopias, but not for the return of Indigenous lands or sovereignty. It's not an either-or scenario. Both are possible and they are necessary. So I know we just talked about a lot, and I want to take a moment to invite responses in the chat about what thinking about some of these things might be bringing up for you in terms of feelings, what connections you might be making. One way to think about how to form a response could be the ABC protocol, which is what affirmed your thinking, what broadens your thinking, and what conflicts with your thinking. So I'm going to wait about 10 seconds. That's usually about how long it takes before responses in the chat start coming up. Thank you, Pedro. What affirmed, what broadened, and what conflicted with your thinking? Is reparations for Black Americans part of this too? Ooh, that's a really great question that I do not have the answer to. Does anybody else? Some of the presentation might address some of that. So again, what affirmed your thinking, what broadened your thinking, and what might be conflicting with your former thinking? I don't know if people are just formulating thoughts, but what I might do is keep going and just let people, you are always welcome to drop your thoughts in the chat at any point. Justice for Indigenous Americans is affirming for me. Thank you, Shauna. Brought on by the idea that Indigenous sovereignty and the Red Deal don't conflict with the Green New Deal. Okay, so let's talk about the 3 pillars of the Green New Deal. Oh, Sushmita says, I took permission to live on this land by those who occupied it. Yeah, those are great self-reflections that kind of broaden our thinking because we really aren't raised or educated in a way that teaches us to think about the fact that we are settlers on stolen land. So the Green New Deal has 3 pillars. Any piece of legislation that embodies these 3 core pillars, no matter what party passes it, no matter what it's called, can be considered a part of the Green New Deal. So the first pillar is stop the climate crisis through a 10-year nationwide mobilization. We know the science. In the United States, we have less than 10 years to move our society to net zero emissions if we want to keep under 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming. We are not on track right now. 2, create millions of well-paying union jobs to ensure economic prosperity for all. And 3, establish a second Bill of Rights and defend the dignity of all people. So what does it mean to bring the Green New Deal home here locally? We have to start by nurturing our relationship with the land and the tribal nations. We need to invest in local communities and create economic power for the most marginalized. And we must look to each other and stand in solidarity with each other in all the different movements fighting for justice. Providing good jobs is also coupled with making sure that the money we are spending is going to communities, not just exacerbating existing inequalities. That means that large spending projects go to local businesses and that we focus on community financing projects. So that's a lot of material again. And I want to make sure we're not overwhelming anybody. Let's all just take a deep breath to reflect for a moment. So when you do a breath, I think there's a lot of different ways you can think about it, but you can think of it as like smelling a flower. And then what I often hear is it's good to like hold your breath for like maybe 2 or 3 seconds before releasing it again slowly. And your exhale can be longer than your inhale. And I'm gonna look at some of the thoughts in the chat. So Shruta says, Kimberly says, union jobs mean that skills are constantly updated and passed on through the workforce. That's a great point. Thank you, Kimberly. Okay, if everyone's ready, we are gonna keep going. So what we're demanding for with the Green New Deal is being taken up by communities around the country and even the world. The Green New Deal and the scale of the climate crisis requires a creative effort on us as organizers and community members to reimagine and redesign our cities, our neighborhoods, and more. Let's take a minute to think about what creative projects we would like to see in our communities as we push towards climate repair and more resilient communities. So as you're sort of doing your breaths, smell a flower, hold it for 3 seconds, blow out a candle. Feel free to share your responses in the chat. What creative projects would you like to see in your communities as we push towards climate repair and more resilient communities? Ooh, Maureen brought up a great point. I'm conflicted because I believe in everything we're discussing, but where does the funding come from? Reggie says Washington County Conservation Corps. I would love to hear more about that, Reggie. What creative projects we would like to see in our communities as we push towards climate repair and more resilient communities? Thank you, Pedro. Amy Johnson agrees with what Reggie said. I'm going to assume there might be people forming thoughts in the chat, so I'm going to wait. Hydroponic gardens. Ooh, Bridget Brooks is founding a new nonprofit called the Tualatin Sustainability Network. Bridget, please feel free to share information about that with us and ways we might support. Debbie is hopeful that we can broaden our perception of supporting and stewarding community to include natural life besides people. Kimberly, I would like to see a reckoning on the damage that general aviation does to the populace in the vicinity of airports. Shauna, I would like to see more information sources about the Grand New Deal translated into Spanish and other languages. Yes, Sunrise does have, I think on the national level, trainings in Spanish, but there absolutely needs to be more of them. Maggie, more collaborative public art. Adam says, cut 1 tree and plant 3, mandate on all land mandate on all land in all cases / all land. Arborists need permission to cut down trees by city, county, and soil and water. Penalties for noncompliance. Accountability. So we can go get a hold of Bridget for her new nonprofit at bbrooksmsw@gmail.com. Counselor Jared Rosenthal says a National Green New Deal service program, somewhat like Vista. Reggie says, sorry, my computer wants to restart. Reggie says codify the protection of healthy large form native trees from removal on city and county scales. So many great ideas. Wow, okay, I don't know if I can read all these because there's so many good ideas. Move away from lawns to planting our own garden of vegetables. I'd like to see more biophilic design in city planning and architecture. Massive education programs to help bring people along. I've also helped our city to become a certified Bee City USA Tualatin to help our pest management plan. Oh my gosh, there's so many great ways to think about the future in terms of repair and resiliency. So now let's zoom into our community and check out a local program that is doing the work of healing the land with regenerative practices. I'm so excited to share this next speaker. Alejandro Tecum is the director of the Regenerative Agriculture Program at Adelante Mujeres, which is a nonprofit organization committed to providing a holistic education and empowerment opportunities to low-income Latina women, their families, and their communities in and around Forest Grove, Oregon. Alejandro, please take it away. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. And we know that food is very important in our lives, but the way we are growing it now is really, it's really dangerous for our environment. Can you move the slide, please? Yeah, we have this problem around the world that the global system is accounted for 30% of total of the pollution of air and water. So this is something we need to be aware of when we are thinking about food. And I'm glad I see many who say that they want to grow gardens, but it's not only growing the garden, it's how we grow the garden that makes the impact. Industrial farming practices contribute to air and water pollution. And if we have a garden using those chemicals, we are increasing we are not solving the problem, we are making it worse. And if you see here, only in the US, 1.7 billion tons of topsoil annually is lost. It means like 75% of all the land now is considered unused because it's so poisoned that doesn't give anything. Over the past 40 years, we have lost 1/3 of farmland, which is really scary if we think that we need to feed more people who are coming behind us. We're losing agricultural land again. And another number is like 4 tons of topsoil per acre because of wind erosion and water erosion annually here in the United States. So it is really, if you think about it, it's really scary. But we sometimes don't pay attention to it, but I would like to wake up you. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, this is the thing. Climate change is a lot of carbon in the atmosphere. But remember, carbon is not the enemy. Carbon is the building block of life. The problem is where it is now. We have put it through the years. And we can see uncovered soil, the carbon is going up. The water is evaporating. And we need to cover the land. We need to stop plowing and tilling, and that's the thing that we need to understand. And in the other picture, you can see it is the carbon and the water is kept in the soil because we have a lot of plants. Plants get the carbon. They call it carbon sequestration. They get the carbon from the atmosphere and fix it into the soil. If we can move to the next, yeah, you can see here inside the soil, when the water is gone and the carbon is gone, it's just dirt. There's no life there. But in the next picture, you can see the carbon is there, the water is there. So microorganisms which feed the plants, they are there. So and you can see the color of the material. The dirt is it's brown, but the good soil is black. So that's what we want when we are planting when we are thinking about agriculture and growing food. That's why at Adelante Mujeres, we decided to go with the regenerative agriculture, which is a system that combines principles, techniques, and materials that feed the soil. If you can see in this picture, I don't need to explain a lot here. You can see the bed that is covered. The soil, the color of the soil is a little darker, and the plants are more alive. Then the other one is uncovered, and you can see the plants are sad, and there is a crust of dirt. When we water it, the water doesn't go down, and it causes erosion. And the other thing in the corner, you can maybe you don't see it, but we didn't put a bed, and I think this is what shows what the general agriculture is doing in our land. Plowing, no conservation, no building soil, no principles. So we are eating food that is not healthy, doesn't contain nutrients, and that's why we are sick. Cancer is going up, and now with the COVID, you have seen that people who are not healthy, they are the victims of this pandemic. So I hope we can understand the impact. In these few minutes, I cannot explain the whole thing that is behind it, but I just want to say that regenerative agriculture is rebuilding the soil, giving it life back again, and growing food that is dense, nutritious, and healthy for us, healthy for our communities, and healthy for the planet. The UN says that if we go to practice, if we start practicing regenerative agriculture, 80 to 80% of the greenhouse emissions will go down. So I hope what I'm doing now is just putting a seed in your mind, and you can keep researching, because it is up to us if we want to keep our environment healthy, or we can destroy it. There is a saying that we vote with our forks, and I say to you, we protect our environment with our forks. If we are really activists, revolutionaries, advocates of the environment, we are hypocrites if we are feeding or if we are eating food that is grown in the conventional agriculture that is killing the soil. Thank you.
Rena, do you want to take it over?
Hi, sorry, I'm having tech problems. I think my Zoom just disappeared. Oh, here it is. Okay, that was really strange. Thank you. All right, so anyways, thank you, Alejandro, for sharing your work with us. And for more information about Adelante Mujeres, please visit adelantemujeres.org. And programs like these are what we need more of in our neighborhoods at a much bigger scale, servicing so many more people. And it's up to us to make sure we prioritize this work in our cities and our counties. With that, I'm going to pass it on to Sushruta and Shishir to introduce our panelists.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Sushrita, and I will be moderating the panel portion of the event today along with Shishir. I wanted to take a moment to introduce our wide array of panelists we have here today, and they've graciously taken a lot of time out of their valuable Saturdays to be here. We have State Representative Wednesday Campos, who works as a case manager for Family Promise of Beaverton, where she currently helps families experiencing houselessness find their new homes. She's also the youngest legislator in Oregon and one of the few members of the POC caucus. Mayor Lacey Beatty of Beaverton is a former city councilor, veteran, housing and youth advocate, and much more. Lacey has a long history of contributions to the country and the Beaverton community. Metro Councilor Garrett Rosenthal is a small business owner and has been an environmental consultant and planner for more than 40 years. With that, I'll pass it to Shishir to introduce the rest of our guests.
Washington County Commissioner Nafisa Fai is a public health expert, small business owner, and working mom, as well as the first Black Muslim commissioner for Washington County. Beaverton City Councilor Nadia Hassan is a former high school teacher and also a human resource and marketing professional. And Cornelius City Councilor Doris Gonzalez is an environmental health and safety coordinator and is also a member of the Cornelius Library and Metro West Recycling Advisory Boards. Thank you so much for being here. A quick note to the audience, if at any time you have questions for our panelists, please put them in the Q&A section on the bottom bar of the Zoom screen, and we will select a few to ask during our audience Q&A portions. And if you would like to direct a question to a particular panelist, you can feel free to add that. Right. So let me start with a question for all our panelists, and we can just do round robin on this. Tell us a little bit about what made you politically aware, and what led you to run for office. And let's start with Councilor Doris Gonzalez.
Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
So I actually did an internship about 11 years ago. And I actually entered for Congresswoman Judy Chu of California. It was my first exposure to anything related to politics. It was extremely overwhelming for me. It was a different pace, a lifestyle that was very different. Everyone was just on a mission. But I got really intrigued by what goes on in our government. And it took me some time to really figure out what I wanted to do. And over the years, I've been just involved in different organizations. And about three years ago, I decided to be more involved locally. And so I joined the library board, where I started to learn more about our new library that we were getting. And then I also just started to realize that the people in these commissions and these boards don't look like me. They're a lot older. And so it was really interesting to be invited and to have my perspective and my lived experience appreciated in some of the conversations that we were having. For me, the library is very special. When I was growing up, I didn't have a computer at home. My parents didn't speak English. So I spent a lot of my summers and my days at the library with the librarians. They always helped me figure out what I needed to do. I used the libraries there. So for me, being able to be on the library board was really significant. After that, last year, I heard that there was an opening on the city council. And previously, I had thought about that as just an idea that there were no women on the city council, and that the men that were on there were mostly white. So that idea kind of just faded. And last year, after everything that was going on, I felt very overwhelmed. And I wanted to do something. And I figured that the thing that I could do was to take a step and do something where I could be at the table to make decisions. And so on a very short period, I actually decided to run for city council. And a couple months later, here I am, where I'm actually doing something that I vaguely thought about in the past. And I'm super excited to learn about what the city is doing and to work with other people and to show them that local government is very important, that there's some things that are not as exciting, but it's things that really impact everyone on a day-to-day basis, such as your water bill and all these things that we just sometimes don't even think about. So for me, that's how I became involved. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Gonzalez. And now I would like to ask the same question to Mayor Lacey Beatty.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I think after running for like a whole year, I feel like everyone has heard my story of why I ran for office. But for the Cliff Notes, if you were not in Beaverton for the last year, I was raised by a single mom and really, she worked 3 or 4 jobs my entire life growing up, and college wasn't something that was in the cards. So I joined the Army so I could pay for college. I joined right before 9/11. So, at the time I thought I'd hang out in Germany, drink a couple beers, come home and go to college. Then I found myself in the early days of the Iraq War, really young at 19 and living through this just horrific event. And I was sitting watching the Bush-Kerry election in like real time from half a world away, and like unbelievable that people voted for Bush for a second time. It was just like, man, if people could see what I'm seeing right now, there's no way they would vote for this guy again. I knew I wanted to be politically engaged. It would be, almost a decade later until I could figure it out. I got out of the Army and we moved to Oregon and went to college and graduate school, and it's really lonely. The thing that people don't talk about that's really hard about leaving the military is that this idea that you're constantly surrounded by people and you have like a mission and you're going in a certain direction, to be dumped, kind of in the middle here. I'm not from here. I'm from Southern California, so we didn't have any friends. It was a rough year. So I started volunteering and working on our Beaverton Community Advisory Board, really talking to people about what Beaverton's future should look like over the next 10, 20, 30 years. And we know that original visioning project really guided so much work in City Hall. And I looked around the council and there was no one young, like hardly any women. And 7 years ago, when I was elected the first time, the entire county board of commissioners was men. The entire parks board was men. The entire fire boards was men. Every senator and state rep that represented Beaverton were men. I was one of the few women serving. And now, like, when you look around, like, we've done some pretty rad shit in 7 years to like look at this panel of elected officials. I mean, we have really done some good work. We have a lot of work to do, but that's basically my story. So there you go.
Thank you so much, Mayor Lacey Beatty. And can we have Councillor Nadia go next?
Sure. I mean, I think, thank you all for making time on this lovely Saturday to be here. I could talk to you about my civic engagement in college, where I did like finance committee work, or high school when I was part of the diversity club. But I'll tell you about 3 years ago or 2 years ago when the Student Success Act funding was made available to districts, and communities in Beaverton were being asked specifically what they wanted the funding to go to. And we were being asked, like, which was really exciting. And so I was going to, I was looking at the calendar and it was like Tuesday night or Thursday night at 6:30. And I was like, I can't, like, that doesn't really work for a working mom schedule to go to a community forum to provide feedback on how Student Success Act funding should be used. But I was like, you know what, I'll figure it out, I'll go. And I showed up, and I had a baby, she was maybe 6 months. So I took her and I thought, well, we'll figure it out. And I walk in and I'm welcomed by, really amazing school district staff, but like, there's no childcare. Very few people looked like me. And I looked around and realized that like the voices of Beaverton community members were not at this event. And so I tried asking about other events, and it was the same thing. Like the people that were showing up to give feedback weren't the people that represented the community. And that's when I realized that I would have to continue to use my voice to represent the community. Last year, the city of Beaverton had a unique opportunity to add a 6th seat on city council. And it seemed like a really good opportunity to take my lived experiences as a teacher, as a mom, as a woman of color, and say, I'm here and I'm here to represent different communities that I know and that I've worked with. And it's been a really exciting learning experience, and I'm excited to serve y'all.
Thank you, Councillor Nadia Hassan. And now can we have State Representative Winsley, please? Winsby. Sorry if I got that wrong.
You're good, thank you. Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me on this panel of some fantastic people. My name is Winsby Campos. I'm the state representative for House District 28, which is the Aloha Beaverton area. And I would say that the things that made me politically aware, and the things that pushed me to run for this seat are go together pretty well. But I will say, that I got my entrance into politics back in 2013 when I first moved into the area. I grew up in the little town of Bandon down in Southern Oregon, came up here to Washington County to go to school at Pacific University, where I joined my College Democrats chapter. And that was my first foot into the door. I knew that I was interested in politics, wasn't really sure how to go about getting involved, but getting involved with my College Dems chapter opened up a lot of doors for me and connected me with the Washington County Democrats, who part of the folks putting this on, and I had the opportunity to volunteer with the Washco Dems board to sit on the executive board for about 5 years, and that in turn also opened up many doors. But really, I became politically aware pretty early on in life. And I will get to that part. I work as the case manager for a transitional housing program that helps families experiencing houselessness get into housing. And this work is the catalyst for me having made the decision to run. I had a day at work where I had one too many conversations with the folks I serve about too many conversations with them about the lack of resources and solutions in the area. Started a day out where I had a phone call where by the end of the phone call, the person knew that they were going to be sleeping outside that night because all of the organizations that they had called, including ours, had wait lists. I ended that same day with a mom breaking down in tears in front of me, asking me how she was supposed to put a roof over her children's heads when she works 40 hours a week but only makes minimum wage. And she laid out what those numbers meant for her. And that meant that even with all of the budgeting in the world, she was still coming in about $300 short of what she needed to cover necessary expenses. And so she left, and I sat at my desk feeling really angry and frustrated. And I thought to myself, what we need is change at a policy level. We need people that are on the front lines of the most pressing issues that we're facing, but we also need people who have diverse lived experiences, like those that I bring as somebody who grew up in a low-income household. From the age of 8 until I left for college, my family lived in a motel room because that's what we could afford. There were times in my life we had to go to the public library restroom to literally roll sheets of toilet paper to take home so that we could save $8 that week and put it towards bills. My father is an immigrant to this country, and so really early on in life I was exposed to racism and social injustice and inequities. And so at the age of 10, I actually decided that I wanted to go into immigration law. And I don't think I strayed super far from the field going into politics. And so I ended up deciding to run, and here I am today.
Thank you so much, Representative Winsby. And can we have Commissioner Nafisa, please?
Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for having me. My name is Nafisa Fai, and I am the newest member of the Washington County Board of Commissioners, representing for District 1, which is about 2/3 of Beaverton, Aloha, Cooper Mountain, and Reedville areas. I'm really excited to represent folks in my district, and I've been on this commission for now on my 3rd month. I ran for Washington County Commissioner really in 2 folds. One, to demand and demonstrate representations and to challenge the narrative lack of representation for on that board level, and then to also really for once rest this narrative in Washington County that we all of a sudden got diverse. We're the #1 diverse county in Oregon, and there's been a critical, lack of representation in critical platforms at the leadership level. So I really wanted to challenge that, and and even if we don't win, to really come up with a blueprint or a pathway, a guide for the next person to challenge, and then the next person, if that person doesn't succeed, and one day make a dent and really have a true representation at that board level. And the community really see this as an opportunity and really got behind me and supported me, and we made it happen. We had a competitive primary and had a competitive general, but because of the community and how hungry people were for representation and the lived experience, and really voices that everyone can say, that's me up there. I lived in low income housing. I've been in poverty. I used to take so I wanted to really, we all got together and we won. And then the other fold really was, it was where I can be most impactful as myself, as a community, somebody who's been part of the community here in different lens and different hats. I really felt like this is where I can have the most impact for not only people in Washington County, but regionally as well as statewide. And, I came here as a refugee and utilized county services, and then went on, after working for the American Red Cross nearly a decade, went on to work for county government, different roles, and then left to work for a nonprofit organization at a policy level, and lobbied and advocated for public health policies and or an ordinance at the county level. So I really had an understanding from a different lens of, the impact we can have at that, at the county level if we had the right people in these positions. And I thought I would challenge that, and had a great, support, and here we are. And I'm looking forward to representing you all and working with everyone here.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Nafisa Fai. And last but not the least, can we have Councillor Gerrit Rosenthal, please?
Take myself off mute. Thank you. It's nice to be on this panel with all these people that represent a very new trend and a very new direction, and the kind of representation that I hope we continue going forward, because it's a much broader representation than when I was, shall we say, your age. How I got politically aware, I'm not even sure my memory goes back that far, but let's just say it was debate in high school, my love of wilderness, the Vietnam War, and George Bush. When George Bush was president, I got so disgusted, I decided to run for House District 37. The other thing is I have worked for a regional government before. I worked for the regional government, not quite the same as Metro, but similar. So I ran for Metro. I worked for the Council of Governments down in Eugene. And I got to be a believer in the needs of community, larger community than just individual cities, individual local groups. The fact that we actually operate as a larger functional group. In other words, we have regional needs. And that's been shown recently when the counties have asked Metro to deal with the housing issue and with the supportive housing services. It doesn't help everybody if just one jurisdiction takes the lead and does it one way and then everybody else does it a different way. So there's a real role for, shall we say, collaboration and coordination. And I believe strongly in collaboration and coordination. And so I ran because I have a lot of the experiences in what Metro does, which has to do, I've done land use planning, I've done solid waste planning, I've worked on environmental issues, I've done nature preservation and so forth. I'm a hydrologist and an environmental chemist. I've been fortunate in that most of my life, I was able to work in the environmental consulting field. So I've had a really good and broad experience with a lot of cities and a lot of city problems and a lot of the kinds of environmental issues that, of course, the Green New Deal will hopefully address. So that's a little bit of it. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Councillor Rosenthal. And now I'll pass it back to Sushruta, who's going to ask a few more questions, one to each of our panelists.
Thank you, Shishir, for asking those questions. And I'll start with Nafisa. What have you learned about the county government so far, and what policies do you see, coming forth to address climate change at the county level?
Great question. I've been saying that I've been drinking from a firehouse, or at least I felt like I've been drinking from a firehouse for the last 3 months. And one of the things I learned is all the stuff that's happening in the county, all these initiatives, and how sometimes there are competing priorities. And I think a lot of them heavily concentrated on transportation and affordable housing, and really just what's happening in the COVID, and really have been focused on learning what are all the moving parts in these big topics, and really been sitting in on this supportive housing services, the LIP program, and the LIP committee to really put together that plan to send it to Metro, and really understanding a lot of what's coming up for what are some of the issues for homeless and people who are experiencing homelessness, and how do we mitigate with this new money that we have. And I'm not sure, I don't think climate change has come up, to be honest. I haven't heard, I think a lot, I think climate change, I feel like it's not a topic that easily comes up. And when we talk about affordable housing or transportation, or even this committee I sit on, I haven't really been hearing, hey, how do we achieve net zero greenhouse gas, or any of that? Like, I think I haven't really been, I'm not gonna say I don't know what the county is doing, but I'm hoping that as a new commissioner, especially for District 1, who are experiencing heavy congestions and a lot of development happening in my district. I really want to push our county to sort of have a conversation about what is our game plan when it comes to climate change and how do we mitigate, because human beings, we are the dominant cause of climate change, and how do we, and I think the wildfire, I was it sort of, the wildfire that happened sort of centered climate change and really mobilized a lot of people, but then it died down. So I'm just going to be transparent and say I haven't participated in a lot of climate change conversations in our county level. And I think it will take groups like you all to center that conversation, to say, we're talking about affordable housing, and we're talking about how to mitigate some of the crises happening, people who are experiencing homelessness. How does climate change fit in, or how do we mitigate the climate crisis? How do we make sure that the contractors that we're going to hire are going to, facilitate good practices of, to make sure that, we're not further perpetuating more climate problems, that we're going to really be, cognizant of the world we leave behind for our children. So that I'm hoping after I'm, under 5 months or so under my belt, hoping to really center some of those conversations and really have. But so far, that's where I'm at.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Fye. We'll move over to Mayor Beatty. Or actually, let's do Wednesday first. Can you talk a little bit about the intersection between climate and access to housing, and also criminal justice reform, and how that kind of works at the state level? Because you kind of have a broader overview of the whole Oregon.
So that's a fantastic question. Thank you for asking that. So, when we talk about housing, which I spend a lot of time doing, particularly since I'm on the housing committee in the legislature, there's an intersection in so many ways. And I think we're seeing that in some of the legislation that has come up this session. One of the bills that we've seen go through the Housing Committee is the Healthy Homes Bill. That's House Bill 2842, for anyone who's interested in going and checking that out. Its intent is to create a new program at the Oregon Health Authority to expand access to retrofits that make homes warmer, healthier, and more energy efficient. And we know that that leads to lower energy bills, it leads to fewer sick days for folks, and it leads to less exposure to harmful air quality like diesel exhaust and wildfire smoke. And so there's a number of ways that we can address climate change and also address this piece of housing and housing affordability and affordability around utilities. And I'll throw out another bill, well, because I can, help the energy affordability bill, House Bill 2475. I believe we'll be seeing that one come to the floor pretty soon. It will allow our state to create different rates for people with lower incomes to ensure that nobody pays more than their fair share for home heating and electricity. And so that intersection is clear and important. But, one of the things that I think is really important to acknowledge is that I said this a lot on the campaign trail, that I can't talk a whole lot about, housing and what that might look like in 50 years or so if we're not sure, if we're not taking those steps to address climate change, because what will this world look like in 50 years if we are not putting that at the forefront? And so, whenever we talk about these issues, whether it's housing or transportation or, education, all of these things, they intersect. And I think it's important that we as elected leaders continue to push that narrative forward so that we are telling folks that this is something we want to see actual policy We want to see policy pass. That's what the community wants. That's what, we know that our most marginalized, our most vulnerable communities are disproportionately impacted by climate change, by housing, by all of these things. With regards to criminal justice, I'm sorry, could you expand on that question or ask it again?
Sure, yeah. So there's both, thank you so much for answering the portion about, climate change and the housing portion, but also, as you were speaking to the portion about making sure that marginalized communities are centered at the forefront, climate justice and how that goes towards, making sure that we prioritize the health of our communities over things like policing in harmful ways. How do those two things go together?
Well, that I'm going to do my best to not ramble on too much in this one because I think there's so much that can be said here. But I mean, you noted it in the question itself, right? We know that folks are marginalized by these systems that we have in place. I'm really grateful to have signed on to have introduced a couple of things, to have done both with regards to criminal justice reform. One of the bills that I have signed on as a sponsor, I believe it's a bill that is being championed by Representative Bynum, is in eliminating the use of things like tear gas. We know that that's not good for the environment. We know that it is inhumane to use these things. We know that it is an important part of the discussion. We also know that, throughout this pandemic that we saw this last year, throughout the wildfires that we have used, that prison labor has continued to be used in a way that is harmful to the folks in our prisons. Whether that is folks being sent out as firefighters and not being paid fair wages for those things, or folks who have not had access to like proper PPE when handling hazardous materials in prisons, again throughout this last year. We know that BIPOC communities are disproportionately impacted by this all, and so we have so much work to do, and I'm hopeful that we see a number of bills that have been proposed come out successfully out of this session around these issues.
Thank you so much, Representative Campos, for answering those questions. I'll move on to Garrett. Metro is kind of a little confusing for folks because it's kind of like a unique tri-county body. But what projects and policies, especially related to transportation and transit accessibility, is Metro taking to address the climate crisis?
That's a really good question. Metro, a lot of people don't realize Metro is not exactly in the driver's seat when it comes to climate. What the main role Metro does is they have a climate smart strategy. And the goal is to make sure that all the other cities, remember there's 24 cities in Metro and 3 counties, is to make sure that all of the cities and counties in the region adopt some elements, not necessarily always the same elements, not always in the same degree, but they adopt something that addresses it, whether it's a greater vegetative cover to keep temperature islands from happening. And they have standards that happen in some of these for some of the different programs. For example, I mentioned the trees, restoring native habitat and floodplains, and then expanding access to trail systems so that people don't have to drive places to have recreation. So their goal in the climate, I mean, obviously they need to take care. They also manage the performing venues, the exposition center, the convention center, and the P5, the Winning Stad and those things downtown, and the zoo. So they have individual programs for all of those venues to make them more energy efficient, less wasteful, more climate friendly, whether it's using solar panels or just not wasting water and not wasting heat and so forth. But unfortunately, Metro doesn't have much control over larger policies such as housing policies of the city of Portland or the city of Beaverton. Those are really handled by the local government. So it's having an overall strategy that they get everybody, and through a little bit of, shall we say, arm twisting. In other words, if you want to get good grants and you want to be considered for, housing projects, you have to consider these aspects. So that's the arm twisting, but it's not a regulatory force in a sense. So it's that regional coordination that's really important. And you're right, Metro's role is not understood by many people. It's a very different role from the legislature and a very different role from the local governments.
Thank you, Garrett. Do you have anything to add to that? I'm not sure if I cut you off.
No, I mean, does that answer your question, or did I miss some part of it?
Yeah, I think you did a great job of expanding on that. And I guess the next question kind of goes to both Mayor Beatty and Councillor Hassan, but we'll start with Councillor Hassan. Both of you are in Beaverton, and what does climate work look like, and what are the first steps to achieving the goals of a Green New Deal in Beaverton? And both of you can kind of hand it off to each other if you'd like.
I'll say a little bit. I know Mayor Beatty has a lot more maybe passion in climate justice and understanding, as I am in my third month in office. The city of Beaverton had put together a really rad climate action plan with very specific, things that we want to be working on, and some of the stuff that we're doing at the state level in terms of lobbying. There's a really big focus on some of the climate action work specifically. And so I'm really excited to see that kind of coming to life on a really personal level, similar to what Commissioner Fye shared. I haven't heard a lot about climate action, just generally speaking, in our meetings and our conversations. And I think education, like I can't emphasize enough, we are not teaching people like the things to know what to know to know to know. Like we don't know what we don't know. And I really center a lot of my initiatives and work around racial equity. And that's tied to climate justice as well. And so really finding ways to weave all of those conversations, I think, is really important. And feeling like we're just continually not just educating ourselves on council in the county and Metro, but also bringing other communities along. Like, how are we educating people about, consumption and how to use the different bins and what they're supposed to be doing. So I think we've got some opportunity to do work in that and bring people along so that they can understand, really good climate action choices. I truly believe in my heart that choices that people make sometimes are a result of ineducation or misunderstanding and not a reflection of not caring or giving a shit. Like, people, for the most part, give a shit about our environment, but they don't know what to do or how to do that, and how to do that in a way that actually takes care of our environment.
Yes. Give a shit. That's the part to start with. So here's like the brass tacks, right? Like, we wrote a climate action plan. It is rad, but it is aspirational at best because we are not putting resource, money, and time into it, right? Like, we can create the plan of a decade and let it sit on a shelf from here to kingdom come. And I was looking in the chat here with Reggie talking about the tree canopy. Every year that I've been on council, I've been asking for a tree policy that would preserve our old grove trees from being cut down. And last week in a meeting, I had to say, like, once you cut seeds, you can't uncut seeds. So like, when are we going to put this to the top of the list? And the city's like, well, we don't have enough resources. We're working on this project or this project. But like, climate action isn't something that we could just simply wait till it's convenient. And it really has to be, like Councillor Hassan said, weaved into everything we do. We can't just be like, here's climate action, here's racial justice, and here, like, we cannot operate in silos like that. We have to put that forward. So we have on our consent agenda for Tuesday night, the start of a climate action task force. As the mayor, I get to select who's on it. I want to commit to selecting 50% 50% of the membership being under 30, making sure that we have a diverse group of representation. And what Councillor Hassan and I can do together is force the city to make sure that we message that, so we don't get the same 100 people applying and having the same people on boards and commissions that don't reflect the community, that don't look like us, and that own a business or have some other seat, like the way to get their seat at the table. Like I constantly ask, and just asked in the email this morning to staff, like, how did you select community members for this? You know, just because you own property in Beaverton and or families have generations of owning property in Beaverton doesn't mean you get a disproportionately large voice in our decision-making process. And when we're talking about things like recycling and doing the right thing because you give a shit, like it also has to be easy. Beaverton lost its Far West Fiber. I've been nagging Metro about this for a year. They want to move it to Cornelius. That's the only like mixed waste facility. And there's nowhere close to Beaverton to take styrofoam and take that stuff. And if you're an hourly worker trying to work and trying to do the right thing, like we can't substitute people's willingness to do things when it comes at a huge personal cost. And why can, if you live near a refuge site, be able to recycle, but like me in Central Beaverton, like to get in my car and drive to Hillsborough or Cornelius to drop something off, it's not convenient. So we don't control trash. Metro plays a much larger role in trash, but we need to start talking about either curbside pickup or some other way, or some private entities going to come in and do it, because there's a million things. And like Councillor Hassan said, we now have a much larger role as city council and mayor in this new form of government to look at stuff happening at the state legislature and play a bigger role. So our big focuses that we're talking to our state reps about are climate, policing, and housing. So we're putting a lot of energy into those three things, because we can't talk all the time on every single bill or we start to become white noise. So where do we have the most impact?
And I would just add to that, like everything Mayor Beatty said. And can you imagine that we have to be working together with our Metro councilors and our state legislators, and the amount of so we know that we've got all these systems, and then that regional collaboration, like the amount of time and lift and work that does. I think that's a lot. And so it's good that we're here and we're doing this. Keep holding us accountable and keep talking to us about what you're telling Metro and what you're telling county and what you're telling city, because there are things that I think are city decisions, but are county decisions. And there are things that are county decisions that are city decisions. And as a newer elected official, I'm learning that myself. And so just, I would say education is really the foundation of that. And this event is a step to continuing to like have this conversation and hopefully like get shit done.
One more comment, because I want to address Karen James in the chat. I'm not complaining. This is a new form of government. I cannot unilaterally, I'm not the queen of Beaverton, I'm the mayor of Beaverton, and we have to get our city council to agree to it. Like when the voters took the power away from the mayor, it meant collaboration, and that's what Councillor Hassan and I are doing constantly, trying to get our colleagues to come down a road with us. So I wish I could snap my fingers and make things happen. It just does not work that way anymore.
We need majority votes.
And the county commission. So if you want Commissioner Fai's stuff to get done, we need to surround her with better commissioners.
Thank you so much, Mayor Beatty and Councillor Hassan, for those wonderful answers. Last but not least, for Councillor Gonzalez, over in Cornelius, what have you learned about your new working environment, and what projects related to climate do you see coming up in the future? Oh, it seems like we lost Councillor Gonzalez.
Got disconnected for a second.
Oh, we'll just wait a moment for.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please. I got disconnected somehow.
No worries. My question was, what have you learned about your new working environment in Cornelius? And what do you see are like the projects and policies concerning climate change and addressing mitigating those impacts in Cornelius?
Okay. I actually, one of the things, if it's okay, I'd like to share a little bit about what little Cornelius is doing when it comes to environmental work. I'm an environmental health and safety coordinator. So these are the type of things that I do for my day job. These are the conversations that I'm having. And I've only been a city councilor for 3 months. And so I actually had a meeting with the city manager because I wanted to learn more about what we're doing right now. And it really surprised me that for such a small town, we're doing a lot of the things that I think are really, really important. One of the super exciting things is that we are working with Energy Trust of Oregon, and we're switching out all of our lights in the city. So for the city buildings and the street lights, they're all being switched out to be more energy efficient. And then we actually just recently signed a long-term agreement with Oregon Shines. And so that's going to help us utilize solar power for the next 40 years. And that's going to save the city about 10% of energy costs. Another thing that we have is we actually have several charging stations or electric charging stations that we're encouraging Cornelius residents to utilize. Right now, we're in a growth spurt, and so we're seeing more people come in with different incomes, and we see some Prius, and so we are trying to encourage those charging stations to be utilized. We also work very closely with Clean Water Services to meet and exceed storm and sewer requirements. And then we also really encourage and we promote the growth of, what we're doing is we're making sure that shrubs and trees are planted near the streams and the waterways. This helps keep the water cool, and it allows for the fish habitat to have a better experience. We also have a very strict street sweeping schedule. And so we're trying to make sure that we're keeping our waterways clean. And then we put on an annual city cleanup. Pre-COVID, we used to do this in May. And so what this is we hold an event where community members are encouraged to come out and to pick up some trash. That way we're keeping all of this, again, out of the stormwater and the drains and all of that. And then we also, in the fall, we host an event where people can drop off their leaves. And so that's another thing that we're doing. And for me, like this is something that really excites me because it's something that we're intentionally doing. And some of these projects do take more effort and it is more expensive, but I've been very fortunate that these are the conversations that have been happening before my time. And so right now what I get to do is I just get to carry on some of the projects and get to learn more about ways in which we can continue to educate our community and continue to focus on the environment.
Thank you so much, Councilor Gonzalez. It's really inspiring to see that even in a smaller city like Cornelius, so much action on climate can be taken, and it gives us a lot of hope for the rest of Washington County, Beaverton, Hillsborough, all these different places and across Oregon. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, and I really want to respect the time of our panelists here. They've already been here with us for about an hour and a half. So we've got some great questions that we got in the chat. We can send those to the panelists and gather some written questions as they have time, and then send it back to those of you who came here. And with that, I will pass it over to Shishir or Pedro to close out here. Or Nadia, do you have a question?
Yeah, I want to say one thing. I hope you all know that the people, like, we are here because we deeply care about this. But some of us might sit in rooms with people who don't. And so don't be afraid to reach out to the rest of the people that we work with. I'm not going to say who, right? But like we are all in a system ourselves trying to bring light to these issues. I hope that our participation shows that we do care deeply about them. But we are surrounded by a lot of people, some who agree, some who don't, some who think that this is a crisis, some who don't, some who think that we need to do something right away, many who don't. So, there are ways to contact your counselors and commissioners and legislators, and don't be afraid to reach out to those people. I hope that our involvement shows that we are listening and we do care, but we need more people hearing from you, not just us. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that point. Yes, Wednesday?
I'm going to just add to that really quickly and then also put a quick plug in for one of my bills. So if you have thoughts on policy you want to see at the legislative level, or if you have thoughts on policy, that we are seeing right now during the session, please email your legislators. I will, like, full disclosure, prior to being in this office, I heard folks say those things all the time. And I was often really kind of sort of dismissive about it. I was like, my email isn't going to do anything. And every now and again, I would do that email or send or make that call. But most of the time I didn't. It is so important. Those emails, our staff sees those. We don't, the legislators don't always. But sometimes we do. But we do have those conversations with our staff when bills are coming up, when people have thoughts on it, when people have concerns, particularly if it's something that you're really excited about. We get a lot of emails of folks that are opposed to things, and not so much from people who support bills. And so your voice is important. So contact us. I will drop my email into the chat. But really quickly wanted to plug, I have a bill that is coming up for a hearing on Tuesday. It is House Bill 3352, and I'll drop in the House Bill number. Thank you, Councilor Hassan, for working on testimony for that. But if you have questions on how you can submit written testimony or oral testimony, absolutely feel free to reach out to my office. The bill, really quickly, is intends to expand Medicaid to those who would otherwise be eligible were it not for their immigration status. And that's specifically addressing adults. We do have legislation in place that does cover all kids, but this would seek to expand it. And so we have a hearing coming up Tuesday at 1. Please submit written testimony, tell your friends. Thank you.
So
Thank you, Wednesday. I'll just open it up for Mayor Beatty or Councilor Rosenthal, Nafi Safai, or Doris Gonzalez if they have any quick plugs, and then we can close out from there.
Yes, quick plugs. Write the emails are really important, but do not cut and paste emails and copy other people's. They do not get read. And I've gotten a crap ton of emails this week that says Councilor Beatty, because people can't even do the research to figure out who they're talking to. And don't sign it on the bottom I pay your bills or I'm your boss. Just think about how you'd want to be treated in the email. And that's the kind of email you should send that gets, and ask a question in the email. That will get a response. Ask them something so they have a reason to respond to you. Otherwise, it's white noise. Beaverton City Council has a recommendation coming on Tuesday from our city manager on how to address our human rights advisories report on policing. So you should pay attention to that. We'll also be approving our climate action committee, or the ability to start it on Tuesday. So Tuesday is a rad day to come watch our city council, I'd have to say. So call in, tell us to pass it, tell us to address policing.
Commissioner Fai or Councilor Garrett Rosenthal, do you have anything to add?
Go ahead, Commissioner Fai.
Sorry, Garrett. I would say, to your group, to try to come to the county with your Green New Deal resolution and see, and to try to pass that. Now, that will be a non-binding, but it will be a good start for Oregon and really especially for Washington County. So I encourage you all to try to seek ways to go to Mayor Beatty and get a resolution on the calendar. Talk to Chair Harrington, myself, and other commissioners, try to pass that resolution as well. And then one day, I think Bridget put in the chat that our chair Harrington of Washington County was interested in doing a climate change or climate action plan. But the pandemic, this historic pandemic, interrupted that. And if that is a priority for the chair, I would say you have a really step up in terms of getting this resolution passed. And then, working with the chair to make the climate action plan for Washington County that the chair wants to resonate within your priorities. Because climate change isn't about climate as well, it's about racial justice and making sure that we have solid, plans, transitional plans that are fair and just for all communities. So it's not just one. So I would say reach out to make sure that any climate change plans that Washington County will adopt or put forward, it's really centered economic and racial justice focused. That's just my plug.
I'll put a plug in for, particularly the city of Beaverton, as also Hillsborough and Washington County, get involved and find out what they're doing with the housing, support the housing plan, and also support the county in dealing with your local, whatever nonprofits you have that are going to be dealing with the supportive housing services. Metro does not provide the direct services, but we're going to sort of ride oversight over this. And so we want everybody to realize that this is a very critical thing. If we can get people into houses, we can reduce the need for supportive services. We can improve the equity. There's a lot that can be done, but we can't let it fail in the next 5 years.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you to everyone who came here today.
I'd like to say something.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I would like to encourage everyone in this room to either consider joining a board or a commission. And if you don't have the time or the energy to do this, to think about who within your circle might be able to do that and kind of have those conversations and encourage them. Because I think it's really important to have a diverse population be represented in these spaces because there are different conversations that are happening. And so we just need more representation. I think that also if younger people see people that look like them, it will give them some opportunities to run for office or to join these boards and commissions. Thank you.
Shashrita, I think Alejandro had a hand raised earlier that I saw, and then
Yes, let's just take a quick moment for Alejandro if he has anything to add.
Sorry, it was a mistake. I just was trying to do something here. Sorry.
No worries. Pedro, take it away.
Yeah, thank you to everybody who came here. It's so great to see representatives like Campos here. Like, you are legendary. We are so inspired by you and by like everybody here on this board. It's been really great to see all of us come together, and like how you all said, like, you're here because you care about the issues and you have been supportive of like progressive ideas out here in Washington County. And it was like the progressive culture and grassroots organizing that helped get all of you all elected. So it's been really great to be able to like follow up on the work of this past couple of years together to have this public forum today. So we're going to just talk really quickly about the three organizations that came together to put this event on. Like I said, my name is Pedro. I'm the hub coordinator of the Beaverton Hub. I've been with the hub for a year now and like about 6 months as the coordinator role. We have a lot of different teams in the hub. There's the policy team, and the policy team was working pretty hard on the Green New Deal resolution. Beyond the Green New Deal for Beaverton, we are also studying policies, studying bills that are going through the state. We've been looking at different charters for the government to kind of understand what it is that Metro does, what it is that this new Beaverton city government is doing. It's a lot of research, a lot of brainstorming, and a lot of creative thinking there. Then we have our recruitment team. These people are like our first connections with people who are passionate about the climate crisis but don't really know how to start. This type of work, and there are connections between like us, the movement, and the public, and how to get people onboarded. This group has also reached out a lot to partner organizations in Washington County and different high school environmental groups, Black student unions, Latino student groups. We have an actions team and direct action. Escalated moral protest is like the bread and butter of what we do at Sunrise. And right now we currently have a letter writing campaign going on that's hopefully trying to use art to get across the moral message of like the urgency of the climate crisis as we lobby our elected officials to pass action. All of our teams meet once a week, and then we have a monthly hub meeting. This public forum took the spot of our monthly meeting. So our next monthly meeting will be happening April 17th. I also want to plug two things from Sunrise National. I know there was some mention about like, how do we have this in Spanish? Well, Somos Sunrise is like the national Latinx cohort of the Sunrise movement. It's a space for Latin movement leaders to come and get trainings, to hold space for each other, to create media in Spanish and Sunrise trainings in Spanish. If you have never been involved with Sunrise but want to make the Green New Deal the rallying call of our communities, like I would really, really recommend you stay in touch and we get you connected to the Somos movement. I really enjoyed that space. And then Sunrise National has also launched their Sunrise Good Jobs for All campaign. We're going to be looking at taking this up at the hub in these next couple of weeks. So yeah, all of our contact information is here. And I tried speaking at like a mile a minute to get this all in. So we're going to have this recording up later for everyone as well. And from here, let me pass it over to Debbie to talk about WashCo 350.
Hi there. It's been such a pleasure to work with Sunrise and the Washco Young Dems on this project. They are dynamic and mobilized, and I really appreciated the connection. 350 Washington County has been active in this community since 2016. We do regular monthly meetings on second Tuesdays, virtual during COVID. Our next, I can't speak nearly as quickly, Pedro, I'm sorry. Our next event is a climate strike in Forest Grove on March 19th. There's a Facebook event with details. We have also been doing quarterly educational films and conversation series. And with regard to the great information on sustainable agriculture, our next film is coming up. Virtual broadcast on April 10th at 2 p.m. We're planning an Earth Day 2021 action, and there are our details for connecting on email and Facebook. And next up is Sushruta.
Thank you so much, Debbie, for that. I am the chair of the Young Dems Committee of Washington County. We're part of the Washington County Democratic Party. And I welcome young and young at heart to join our fight for truly progressive voices in our county and state Democratic parties. This means highlighting issues like the Green New Deal, Medicare for All, and so much more. If this excites you, please drop in on one of our meetings. You can find them. It's the last Monday of every month, 7 to 9 p.m. They're open to the public at washcodems.org/calendar. And if you scroll down and just click on the link, you'll be able to join, and we'll also be able to add you to our mailing list. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you to everybody who stuck around past our little, proposed time limit. It was really great to hear from all of the candidates, and especially Alejandro Tecum. Like, I can't stress enough how excited that program makes me, and how I wish to see not just the program at Adelante Mujeres, but like so many more programs like that pop up and percolate in our city. So with that, can we get everybody to come off of mute and say goodbye?
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Adios.
We'll follow up with the questions.
Thank you and goodbye.
Thank
Doing
you.
it. Thank you for doing it.